Want to go to the boardwalk? My friends asked me at my front door, waiting for my reply. I gave them the index finger, signing them to hold on so I could ask my mother. However, my mom always agreed when Casey and his mom wanted to take Damien, Chris, Mariah, Leslie, and I for something entertaining. She happily agreed, handed me $20, and always gave me that caring, loving smile. I walked out of the front door, joining all my friends yelling across the condo, "Bye, Mom!" We all gathered in Casey's mom's SUV, scrunched up in the bunch of all 6 of us: Leslie, Casey, Mariah, Damien, Chris, and I. Suddenly I got an odd feeling, almost like a chill. It felt so weird, almost like everybody was watching us. My friends all got quiet from their laughing and giggling, and Casey spoke up to say to me, "Alice, are you okay?" Squeezed my hand tightly as I stayed frozen, moving barely enough to nod my head. When we arrived at the boardwalk, we all got out of the SUV, me looking up to the 8 o'clock night sky. When Casey's mom said, "I'll be back to pick you guys up at 11. Call me if you need anything." What I didn't know, which none of us knew, was that would be the last night I would ever get to see my loved ones and all my freshman friends at the mainland. We all at first just watched the calm waves crush on the shore with a pleasant sound and the moon shimmering against the ocean, lighting up the beautiful water. I walked with Casey, holding his hand, as I looked at Leslie and Chris, walking up down the beach, not going far from us, with her head leaned on Chris's shoulder. Casey held me closer and mentioned, "Are you alright? You're not your usual happy, loving mood." I looked back at him and noticed the concern in his eyes. "Yes, babe, I'm fine. But something doesn't feel right." He looked at me with even more concern, like he did something. I looked away and over at Mariah and Damien, holding each other closely right at the shoreline. I felt like something is going to happen. I don't like feeling this at all. I said, at that moment he gave me this reassuring smile that made me feel a little better. "Alice, I would never let anything happen to you. I promise." I felt better and gave him a loving smile, but something still didn't feel quite the same. After playing some skee-ball with Casey, we walked over and sat down at the stairs that connected the beach and the boardwalk. I looked over at Mariah and Damien, still in the same spot, but not looking out at the ocean, but to their left, where Leslie and Chris were standing underneath the pier. I glanced over in curiosity to see what they were looking at. Leslie was running towards me, but where's Chris? Leslie fell on her knees in front of me and reached me, with her head in her hands. I stood up, letting go of Casey's hand to hold her up. "What happened, Leslie? Are you okay?" She mumbled back her reply, but I couldn't understand. Casey stood up to help me out with Leslie. When he said, "Calm down, Leslie. Tell us what happened," she slowed her huffing and said, "Chris." She sucked in air, trying not to cry. "Chris is gone. He disappeared." I sat disoriented, looking up at Casey, who shrugged, his face full of concern. Chris was his best friend, and he seemed worried sick when he said, "Disappeared? Where'd he go?" Then Damien and Mariah sprinted over worried. Leslie continued, "We both went to go get a slice of pizza to share. When I looked down at the ocean from the pizza place, I looked back and he was just gone." She sucked in more air as she cried out, "He was standing right next to me. I called his name. I got absolutely no reply. But not only that, nobody was left in the whole pizza place, not even the workers." "Did you try to call them?" Mariah said. 7 times, and each time it went to voicemail," Leslie said, answering Mariah's question. "That boggled my mind. I love Chris like my own brother. Where could he have gone?" I looked up at Mariah, standing over Leslie, when we were both simultaneously looked over to her side. Damien wasn't there. We both had our mouths open in shock. Mariah fainted, knowing that something happened to Damien. Casey caught her while she was falling and held her up, trying to make her regain consciousness. She opened her eyes about 5 minutes and asked what had happened. I told her when we were safe I would explain everything, but all I knew was that Chris and Damien were gone, and I didn't know what took them away from us. I held up Leslie, still weeping over her missing boyfriend. Casey scooping up Mariah and making her stand. "We have to get out of here," saying, as I looked up at Casey, us being the only semi-stable ones left. I was holding up Leslie when she said to me, still barely able to breathe due to her crying, "I got it, Alice. I can walk myself." I didn't try to argue when I released her, and we all kept running. Where exactly, I'm not sure, but we ran towards the street. Casey and I noticed, after about a minute, that all 3 of us were running ahead of Leslie. When we looked back, Leslie was gone. I collapsed, crying. She couldn't have been gone. She was playing with my head. I was almost sure of it. Casey ran to me and held me up. I saw a tear run down his face. "Alice, Alice, listen to me. We're going to get through this, whatever this is. I love you. Please stay strong." Mariah ran up behind him. She was weak, I could tell. She looked so confused. When she sat down, crisscrossing her legs and then falling over completely, I sat up to help her. Still crying, something was in her neck. It looked like a dart. I plucked it out of her neck. A sleeping dart. Casey fell over too. A dart just shot in his neck. "Casey, Casey!" I yelled, crying. Suddenly everything felt so fuzzy, blurry. I fell over next to Casey, going into sleep. 2 days later, I awakened, dazed, confused, in a hospital-like bed. I looked to my left. I saw Casey. He was still sleeping, but he was all hooked up with looked like IV bags, but I wasn't exactly sure they were IV bags. Looked over to my right. Mariah, she had her eyes closed also, her body moving slowly with breaths. I looked up, and my IV bag. Casey's and my bag looked the same, with black fluid filled inside. I looked at Mariah's bag. Hers was clear. I was so scared. I looked across the room and saw these weird-looking men, all dressed in white. They were talking, but all I could get out of the conversation was the male and female companions had been successfully transformed. He was talking about me and Casey. I didn't feel any different. What were they talking about? They glanced over. I tried to shut my eyes as fast as possible, but they still saw me looking at them. One walked over with a knife in his hand and stabbed me in the leg. The weird part, the knife bent against my skin and I didn't feel a thing. However, I passed back out due to the thought that my leg could have been stabbed. I woke back up, but this time carried in someone's arms. Casey's. He looked down at me, relieved to see my eyes open. "Can you stand?" he asked. I nodded and he slowly led me to standing. I looked up. I was wearing a tight black jumpsuit with black boots. Casey must have seen me looking at my jumpsuit and said, "I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm really scared." I looked up at him with concerned eyes and mentioned to him what had happened when I woke up and the conversation the men in the white clothes were saying. "Successfully transformed?" Casey asked. I shrugged, totally clueless. I think I knew, however, we were given superhuman powers. "How'd you get past the men?" I asked. "I shot them," he said. "Why?" "They told me that we had to guard them. I asked them what we had to guard them from, when they said, zombies. At the moment, he handed me a shotgun and some shells. I didn't care about any freaking zombies. Just as long as I was reunited with my friends. Then I thought about Mariah. "Where's Mariah at?" He looked at me confused. "Mariah was in there when you were making? Because she wasn't in there when I got you unhooked from all the machines you were connected to." Took another blow, this time for my thoughts. Mariah could have wandered off into a horde accidentally when the men weren't in the room. She could be a zombie. Chris, Leslie, Mariah, Damien, well, they just might all be zombies. Zombies trying to kill Casey and I. We went to the front doors and looked outside. The horde was running toward us. Casey placed a tender kiss on my forehead and down my heart till he reached my lips and whispered, "I love you." "I love you, Casey." We nodded to each other with a smirk on our faces and kicked open the doors and into a herd to kill some flesh-eating zombies.